What's a popular saying you don't really understand? Void Raptor said. Shits and giggles. I know what it means, but why? What does shitting and giggling have to do with doing something for fun? Stick said. Don't know the origin of this saying, but my dog used to gobble up poops at the off-leash area before you could get there to stop her. The more you yelled, the faster she ate. By the time you got there, she was smiling ear to ear. That was a shit-eating grin if I ever saw one. Freaking dog. I miss her every day though. Red at Night said. The idiom comes from the advent of laundry services. Basically, before people had washing machines in their houses, you'd ship your clothes off to the laundry service to have them washed and folded. You'd include a list so that you knew what they gave them. Nowadays you still see laundry lists in fancy hotels. JJ82DMC said. $1,700? That's almost the going rate for a top-of-the-line washer in your home nowadays. I don't need my washer to have Wi-Fi. What the fuck? Why do you all keep throwing all of this unnecessary shit in as features? Just sell me a washer that doesn't have a 17-second long end-of-cycle tone, or makes noise when you press the mute button. Looking at you, Samsung. JJ82DMC said. Assuming the tone hasn't changed since I bought mine in 2012, maybe 13, it's long enough you could dance to it, certainly. I think I have video of it still. What used to absolutely annoy me, however, is that when I was still married, since I'm an early bird, I'd wake up around 6, without an alarm, on the weekend and start doing laundry while she was still asleep. She was not an early bird. The washer and dryer makes a loud, high-pitched, 4-tone notification sound, after you press and hold the silent button for about 3 seconds, that would wake up my wife, therefore completely defeating the purpose. But hey, I don't have that to worry about anymore, so there's that. One good rib said. Bob's your uncle apparently refers to a real-life case of nepotism where a man in the UK had an Uncle Robert who was high-ranking, and Uncle Bob got the guy a good job just because they were related. Never heard happy as Larry. Erotica Exhibitionist said. Yeah, the original meaning was from tailoring clothes, where the material would literally be cut out and prepared ahead of time, and then you have your work cut out for you. So it means you have work ready to go and clearly you'll be busy and not just sitting around waiting for stuff to happen, but it doesn't necessarily imply that the work is especially hard. But for most people, having work in the backlog is arduous enough that it carries some implied difficulty, which then gets attached as a connotation to the saying. Birdie Cephanaltera said. The whole 9 yards. I know what it means, but don't grasp where the meaning originated. I have been told that it refers to making of a nice dress or a wedding dress, which would use the entire 9 yards in a bolt of fabric. But that's just apocryphal. And does the term have any relation to the phrase dressing to the nines? Brave Hamster said. The fact that there is a notable exception means that the rule is generally followed. Meaning, you wouldn't have noticed this different thing if it didn't stand out so much. This is used for things that aren't absolutes, but rather general rules. There's also a legal sense wherein stating a special exception implies the general rule. Like if you start a new job and you're told that you are allowed to wear jeans on Fridays, this proves that there is a rule not allowing jeans on other days, even if that rule is never explicitly stated. The stated exception proves the rule exists. Blue at Work said. It means, when you see or observe an exception, it proves the more general rule that the exception applies to. For example, the sign "No parking Monday, Friday between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. This is the exception. The existence of this exception proves the rule, that parking is legal in this space, barring the just listed exception. Zoppernaut said. It's a slightly obscure meaning of prove meaning test, so a proving ground is a testing ground. It means unusual cases test whether the rule is correct or perhaps oversimplified. Edit. Similar thing with the proof of a pudding is in the tasting meaning the test is a pudding. Edit 2. There are actually multiple explanations of this phrase. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/exception_that_proves_the_rule. Iminthamud for a Storm said. This makes me think about how I'm learning other languages and even trying to learn British slang right now. Some of it makes no sense and it's weird to think that they know exactly what it means and it just makes sense to them. Then I think about her sayings and how they actually don't make sense, but we know what they mean. Shoot, the shit comes to mind. Dibba said. This comes from the title of the excellent and hilarious novel by Joseph Heller. One of the major plot points therein concerns pilots in World War II. The only way to get out of risky missions is by means of insanity. However, refusing to fly such missions, even by pretending to be insane, shows that they are, in fact, sane and rational, thereby removing their excuse for avoiding said missions. There was only one catch, and that was Catch 22, which specified that a concern for one's safety in the face of dangers that were real and immediate was the process of a rational mind. Or was crazy and could be grounded. All he had to do was ask, and as soon as he did, he would no longer be crazy and would have to fly more missions. Or would be crazy to fly more missions and sane if he didn't, but if he were sane he had to fly them. If he flew them he was crazy and didn't have to, but if he didn't want to he was sane and had to. Yossarian was moved very deeply by the absolute simplicity of this clause of Catch 22 and let out a respectful whistle. Page 56, Chapter 5. This phrase has since spread in scope to refer to any sort of untenable, no-win, Kafkaesque situation, especially in the context of bureaucracy run amok. For example, wanting to get insurance, but not currently having insurance disqualifies you. Or getting a passport requiring a copy of your birth certificate, but getting a copy of your birth certificate requiring a passport for identification. Or losing your eyeglasses requires looking for them, which in turn requires eyeglasses to see clearly while searching. Tobacco and Books said. Catch 22 is one of my favorite novels of all time because of this. It absolutely encapsulates the horror and irony of being part of military bureaucracy. My unit enduring Operation Iraqi Freedom was almost exactly like the unit stationed at Pinosa. We should have all been sent home to our original units after a 2002 deployment, but because of military bureaucracy, our commander kept us together and almost literally hijacked a flight overseas and sent us back over to the Middle East so he could get a combat fitness report and get promoted. We were so goddamn top-heavy that we hadn't co's doing PFC work. And we were all fucking miserable. We called it Operation Full Bird, as in Full Bird Colonel. Marefidus said. Godspeed. From Middle English phrase Godspeed, may God cause you to succeed. From God, God, plus speed, singular subjunctive of speden, to prosper. From Old English speden, from sped, success, see speed. The wish that the outcome of someone's actions is positive for them, typically someone about to start a journey or a daring endeavor. Little Bit Soft Spitter said. It's also used as a sardonic phrase referring to expected conclusions coming to pass because of the circumstances. Figuring or figuring out means to work with the figures, or, roughly, do the math, that adds up, that works out, basically that makes logical sense. I told him he was in no shape to drive, but he took the car anyway. Of course, he wrapped it around a fire hydrant 5 minutes later. Go figure. Inkseep1 said. Begging the question is a logical fallacy. It is when one or more of the argument's premise assumes the truth of the conclusion. Example, God created the world. The world exists. Therefore God exists. God is assumed in the premise. It does not mean the same thing as raises the question. The money is gone. This raises the question, who stole it? It is incorrect to say this begs the question, who stole it? Edit. If people say begs the question to mean raises long enough, the common meaning and proper use of the phrase will change. David 41 said. Misery loves company. I've been told it means when you're upset, you'll be grumpy to other people because you want them to be miserable like you. But in the USA military, the saying meant that, when everyone is miserable, you can all be happy. Like when on a field up and it starts pouring rain. Well, I can't be miserable because everyone is equally miserable. Working Bones said. No love lost. I had an existential crisis during a 12th grade English exam because one of the questions was there is no love lost between characters A and B. Explain how. Something. I had heard the expression used before but always just kind of ignored it, never thought about what it really meant. I raised my hand and asked the teacher to explain it. She failed. I argued that it's unfair for me to be asked to answer a question I don't understand based on its use of an expression rather than the content of the book itself. She got frustrated and told me that's my problem. I wanted to throw my desk across the room. I just ended up bullshitting some nonsense based on what I think the question was trying to ask. But it was really hard not to get caught up in and distracted by what seemed to me an illogical, meaningless expression. Miss Lert LP said, "Let's say that you and I are friends. We love each other like family. Then I do something you think is terrible, causing you to like me less. One could say that the thing I did caused there to be love lost between us, because we aren't as good of friends as we once were. Now, instead of that, let's say that you hate me with every fiber of your being. Then I, again, do something that you think is terrible. But now you can't hate me any more than you already do. One could say that the thing I did caused no love lost between us because you can't dislike me any more than you already did. It's shorthand for this person did something terrible that would normally make me dislike them, but I already hate them so much that it didn't actually change my opinion at all." Cyanotherla Febro said, "Okay, first of all I want to say that I am not pro-workplace sexual harassment. Relations with coworkers is a bad idea in general. That being said, don't dip your pen in the company ink is a stupid saying, because you should absolutely dip your pen in the company ink. Why is this company making me provide my own ink? What kind of Ebenezer Scrooge shit is that? That's like if the saying was don't park your car in the company parking lot. It makes no sense." Real Philosophy 7705 said, "The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers." Socrates complaining about kids sounds a lot like parents nowadays kinda gives you an idea. Things change but people are still the same at a certain level. Lakagodafly said, "Mum's the word is a popular English idiom. It is related to an expression used by William Shakespeare, in Henry VI, Part 2. 1. The word mum is an alteration of mom, which was used between 1350 and 1400 in Middle English with very close to the same meaning, be silent, do not reveal." Tome Gun 1 said, "I worked with autistic kids one summer and behavior problems and skillfully correcting them was a common occurrence. One particular student misbehaved nearly every day on the bus to the center, and the behavior specialist assigned to that bus would always say to me as I climbed on board, 'She was a real piece of cake today.' This went on for weeks and I finally told the specialist, 'It's piece of work you mean. Piece of cake means she was no problem.' I find both sayings to be weird unto themselves." Murjad Loki said, "Yep, I agree with your interpretation. Like for example, COVID. Sucks. But, silver lining, due to the lockdowns etc. I've spent way more time with my family, wife and kids, than I normally would because we couldn't go anywhere or do anything. No gym, no barber, grocery trips were once every 2 weeks and only myself or my wife would go etc. So we went on lots of hikes last summer and fall, went to parks, just hung out at home in the backyard etc. And it was good and I'm glad for that. But obviously if possible I prefer COVID to never have happened in the first place." Skimmed It said, "I always liked this definition, which was a chapter opening quote from one of the Robotech novels. When it comes to testing new aircraft or determining maximum performance, pilots like to talk about pushing the envelope. They're talking about a two-dimensional model. The bottom is zero altitude, the ground. The left is zero speed, the top is max altitude, and the right, maximum velocity, of course. So, the pilots are pushing that upper right-hand corner of the envelope. What everybody tries not to dwell on is that that's where the postage gets cancelled, too." Anaximandrus said, "Yes, full quote from the book is, 'Good morning,' said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining, and the grass was very green. But Gandalf looked at him from under long bushy eyebrows that stuck out further than the brim of his shady hat. 'What do you mean?' he said. 'Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not, or that you feel good this morning, or that it is a morning to be good on?' 'All of them at once,' said Bilbo. 'And a very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco out of doors, into the bargain.'" Styles Blandish said, "Two meanings here. 1. Historically, Actors were incredibly superstitious and believed that wishing someone good luck or a good performance would bring the opposite. So to combat this, they would wish you bad luck, thereby giving you the opposite. A variation on this idiom is break legs, which refers to the two sides of the curtain, the legs, which would break as they were pulled off to reveal the stage. The implication being they were wishing you many curtain calls. That is, at the end of the show the audience would keep clapping and the stage hands would have to pull back the curtain to let you take another bow. AskReddit 2020 said, "It's less a phrase, and more of a superstition. It used to avoid tempting fate, so if you say something like I've never been in a car accident, people believe you should knock on wood to avoid having that very thing happen to you. It comes from old Celtic tradition where they believed you could ask spirits living in trees, wood, for help or wishes. The first knock was to get their attention, and the second knock was to say thank you. Some also believed knocking on wood prevented the mischievous spirits from hearing what you said. Nowadays people are more likely to just say knock on wood rather than doing it, and it more means not to tempt fate. https://en.m.wiki.org/wiki/knocking_on_wood. Dollenberg said, "This is an attempt at a thought question, but I've always seen it as dumb as hell. Lots of creatures lay eggs. You don't need chickens to get eggs. The egg is a concept independent of the chicken. I can get one from a platypus, FFS. Now if someone specifically asked, what came first, the chicken or the chicken egg, well, it can only be a chicken egg if laid by a chicken. So that's equally stupid. If the first ever creature in history that is genetically identifiable as a chicken hatches from an egg, that egg was laid by a creature that was not genetically identifiable as a chicken. It didn't lay a chicken egg, it laid an egg that a chicken hatched from. Such a stupid saying. This made me irrationally angry about eggs.